Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back again to the Mark Vines Show. This is Mark Vines, your happy host and purveyor of all things that you need to know about what is going on in society today. I thank you for coming in and joining this experience, and I invite you to look at the Mark Vines Facebook site, join the site, like it, and continue this podcast because we have so many important things to delve into, discuss, disseminate, dissect, whatever you want to call it. But boy, is there a lot going on. Just take a look around you and just look at the destruction, mayhem that's going on in America today. And these are things that we need to discuss and get to the bottom of because we certainly need to have the adults come back home. Now, what's going on is maybe you've heard there's somewhat of an election that's going to go on in a short amount of time here, November 3rd to be exact. And we have a decision to make between now and then as a people. Now, as you know, I make no bones about the fact that I'm deeply conservative. I'm a constitutional conservative, as a matter of fact. I'm an old Reaganite, and I don't hide that fact at all. And today I want to talk about the cliche of this election really is different than every other election that there's ever been. My background educationally is I have a degree in political science, so I've been following politics all the way back to high school, if not before. That's something that was ingrained in me as a young kid. I grew up in Florida, surrounded by World War II vets, people that were deeply proud of the United States, no matter what party they belonged to, no matter what their affiliation. They all surrounded the flag, during the Second World War and defeated the Japanese and the Nazis at the same time. And I grew up in that environment and also grew up with a deep and immense pride in the United States. And it just tears me apart to see what's going on today. I mean, some of the behavior that's going on is something that I never, ever thought that I would see in my lifetime. I was talking to a friend of mine earlier today, and I even said, I remember back in the middle of March being at the gym teaching a class, because I do teach spin classes, as a matter of fact, cycling classes at the gym. And I remember one particular night in the middle of March, the fitness director coming in at the end of my class and sort of commandeering the class, if you will, and taking over. And I thought, well, that's kind of rude. Why would you do that? And the fitness manager just stopped the class, turned around, made an announcement and said, we're closed. The gym will be closed for the next 2 weeks. You can't come in. All classes will be canceled, including this class. And that's it. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And of course, it was over 4 months later before we set foot back into that gym again. In fact, last night was my first class back, indoors at least, with that particular gym. And, that was just kind of how surprising it was to me. Just out of the blue, she comes in and makes that announcement. And I thought, well, that's kind of overkill. That's kind of exaggerated. Aren't you overreacting to this whole thing? And she announced that there was a pandemic. And of course, this was before any of us knew what was going on. And then we know the rest. The rest is history. But the point being is that between then, in the middle of March, and now, look at all the changes that have occurred. Look at all of the changes that have occurred. We started with the pandemic. Everybody was in an uproar over that. It was a crisis. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't take this seriously. We absolutely should take it seriously. But at the time, we didn't know a whole lot about what was going on. We didn't know where it came from. We didn't know how many people were infected, how many people were going to be affected, how it was going to affect everybody. And there was panic. Panic. And we were in a shutdown. Now, in a previous podcast, I talked about how we should have adapted over the months, based on the data that we got, and readjusted the economy, readjusted the workplace, readjusted everything that we do regarding the pandemic. I don't believe that we've done that completely, but that's another topic for another day. But we should have adjusted, and we didn't. And then what happened? Then we had the George Floyd incident up in Minneapolis. And then that sparked this the racial tensions that are going on right now. At least that's the way that it was sold to us. Now, we've also talked about in previous podcasts about how that really, in my opinion, was not a racial incident. That was a criminal incident, meaning the police officer that killed George Floyd, we have no evidence that that was racially based. We have a lot of evidence that that was an officer that that killed him and killed him because he was a bully and really just killed him because he was a jerk. But we don't know that that would not have been done to anyone else. I don't know that he wouldn't have done that to me if I had been in that same situation. And it's funny how there have been no follow-on reports. Not one article have I read about how that officer had racial motives behind what he did. But that sparked everything that you see going on right now. Then we had the incident down in Atlanta, and I've talked about how that was a justified shoot. By any stretch of the imagination, by any training that I've been through in my career, that was a justified shoot. Now, but what it did was it started the blame game again. And it started all this class warfare that has been talked about. And my friend Frank Runnels, who has a podcast called The Rugged Individualist, and I invite you to check out his podcast, actually does a whole episode on class warfare. Sparked this class warfare and pitted everyone against everyone else. And before you know it, it wasn't just racial problems in Minneapolis. It was racial problems across the United States. And then it wasn't just the Minneapolis Police Department. It wasn't the Atlanta Police Department. It was everybody. It was Seattle. It was Portland. It was New York. It was Miami. It was every department that's out there. And what's the answer to this? We need to defund them. We need to punish these people. We need to punish the police. Take all of this money away from the police. That'll fix them. That'll show them. And what has it done? It's caused the homicide rate in many of these cities to quadruple in some cases. It's caused people to retire early. It's caused people to leave. It's caused an absolute morale problem. You have departments that can't fill the ranks, and I've talked about this before, and I'll say it again until I'm blue in the face. It's going to cause people to come into police work that have no business being in police work. For those of you that don't like how the police behave right now, you just wait for 10 years down the road when they start hiring people that take a job because they can't find a job anywhere else, and they're not going into law enforcement for the right reasons. And you see how those people behave, and you will rue the day that you defunded these police departments and beat up these people the way that you're beating them up. Now, this is also playing the blame game, because then we have all the statues that are being torn down for inexplicable reasons, statues that have been up for decades, if not centuries, and now we've got to tear them down. Nobody gave a damn about these statues before. Nobody was driving downtown Richmond, Virginia, or Charlottesville, Virginia, or New York City, or Chicago, or any of those other places. Nobody cared about these statues, and now we've got to tear them all down, right? Without going through a legal process, without going through city councils, state legislatures, the United States Congress, because remember, these statues are owned by somebody, and it's not by these people that are tearing them down. This is somebody's property, and they're tearing them down. All of a sudden, it's got to be done, and it's got to be done right now. And then we go in and we say, okay, not only do we have these racial issues, but we've got to revisit the whole reparations argument again. And we're going to make a group of people pay another group of people for damages that were done well over 100 years, over 150 years ago. And you're going to have to pay. Now, never mind the fact that there's not one human being alive in the United States today that was alive during the time that slavery was legal in the United States. Not one person was alive. There's not one person that was a slave owner that is alive today. And there's not one person that was a slave that is alive today. But damn it, you're going to pay reparations. So we're revisiting that, okay? Then we have departments that are being defunded that had absolutely nothing to do with what happened in Minneapolis. Whether you think that was a racial incident or even just a criminal incident, the fact is it was an issue with the Minneapolis Police Department. And then what happened in Atlanta? That was an issue with the Atlanta Police Department. Now, I happen to think that in Atlanta, that was justified. In Minneapolis, that was a criminal act, and the man was arrested, and the man is he's probably never going to see the light of day again. Okay? So that is being handled. But damn it, we're going to defund everybody because we're going to blame everybody for what happened. And do not start with this systemic racism and systemic violence that police departments have been inflicting upon the people, particularly people of color in the United States. The statistics do not bear that out. Absolutely do not bear that out. And I would love to debate anybody any day of the week about that. The numbers do not support that argument. The fact is, policing in the United States today is safer and more fair and more equitable than it has ever been in the United States history. And I would love to debate that with anyone if they'd like to. Okay? There is no way that just look at the videotapes of the brutal incidents that occurred in the 1960s, where fire hoses were being taken and people were being blown down. Dogs were being unleashed on people. Officers were using batons and just wantonly beating down protesters. Show me any footage today where that happens. It does not happen today. Folks, I am telling you as someone that has worked on the streets of a mean American city here in Washington, D.C., I never saw that happen once. And not once did I ever, as a white police officer, go to roll call and sit around and have officers say to me, you know what we're going to do tonight? We're going to go out and we're going to jack up a bunch of black people. Never heard that. Never saw it once. Are there bad apples all across the United States? Or can you find singular examples? I am sure that you can. But that is not systemic racism. Those are bad apples that need to be weeded out. And I can tell you right now, having been in law enforcement at the local and the federal level, that those people are not welcome in law enforcement, and we do a pretty good job of getting rid of those people when we discover that they are there. I'm telling you from the inside, we do a good job of policing that amongst ourselves. Okay? But what we have right now is people want to just dismantle all of these systems, all of these institutions that we have, the institutions that are designed to protect you and to protect me from the people out there that want to take your property, harm you, harm your family, and harm everyone else. And they want to go back to ground zero and start this country over. And I'm telling you right now that come November, you have a decision to make. And I, in my lifetime, have not seen a clearer decision than the one that we are facing right now. If you look at what Donald Trump has done over the last 3.5 years when it comes to restoring the military, restoring pride, building up the economy, lowering the unemployment rate for everyone, to include African Americans and Hispanics and everyone else, by the way, when it comes to rights of the unborn, and on and on and on. He has done a fantastic job, even though he has been under attack from the very day that he stepped foot in office. In fact, I would argue that there were people that were starting to attack him before he got into office. There were people talking about impeachment within hours of him being inaugurated. Okay? And maybe I'll do a show on that at some point, but that's a fact. So on the other side of the spectrum, you have Joe Biden. And Joe Biden right now is in no condition whatsoever to hold the office of president. And he is being controlled by the extreme left wing of the Democratic Party. Absolutely controlled by these people. And he wants to defund the police. He wants to dismantle all of these institutions. He wants to, he's supporting the AOC and the Omar crowd and the agendas that they have. They're the ones that are going to be controlling that party. And they want to absolutely just do away with police systems. And if you want to see what that will look like, what that will look like is like that couple in Missouri that was defending their property. Now, let's keep that in mind. They were defending their property. They had several hundred protesters that broke down the gate to their property. They were coming in, and they were overheard saying things like, we are going to take you out of there. We're going to take this property. That room's going to be mine. I'm taking this, and I'm taking that. They were saying that. And this couple tried to defend themselves, and now they've been charged with felonies. Just think about that. The people that are trying to defend themselves, they now become the aggressors. And in fact, I heard one news commentator say within the last couple of days that the reason why they are being charged is because they were inciting violence by pulling out weapons when that crowd came onto their property. Think about that. They were inciting violence, not the crowd. How messed up is that? But that is a indication of what we are looking for in the future if we make the decision to go with the Biden crowd and put them into the White House. You are not going to like the direction that we are going to go. We have cities burning. By the way, they're all blue cities. They're all left-wing Democrat cities right now that are on fire, that are burning, that actually want to come up with their own rules, own rules where they take from those that have, people's personal property and taking that and giving to others. And we have seen what has happened in some of these zones where they have become independent. There has been murders, there has been rapes, there has been all kinds of mayhem, and they won't let the police in to solve those crimes. You know what happens when you get to the point to where the unruly take over? Do you know who's victimized? Do you know who really is hurt the most by that type of action? It is women, it is children, and it is people of color. So those of you that are people of color, women, those that are old enough to vote, you better keep that in mind come November, that the people that are ultimately victimized, the losers in this type of thing, are those of you that the left-wingers are really trying to appeal to. But you are the ones that are victimized. You are the ones that will suffer the most. And so as we approach November, keep that in mind. Now, those of you that have friends and family, co-workers that don't agree with what you're saying, don't waste your breath trying to change their mind. They are not going to change their minds based on what you tell them. They're illogical. They will not listen. They have already made up their minds that Trump needs to be out just because he is a bad man. Now, they can't give you any examples of where he is a bad man or racist or anything else. In fact, he's helped minorities quite a bit, if you think about it. But that's what they're going to try to convince you. The way that you win elections is you simply motivate the base that is there. We've covered this before where I've talked about how abysmal the election turnout is. Even in the general election or the presidential election, it is an abysmal turnout. The people that win elections are those that get more of their side to show up on any given day. That's the way that it is. You will not convince these people to come to your side. So don't waste your breath. What you can do is the people that have the same views that you do, motivate them to vote. I hear this all the time where people have very strong opinions on one side of the political spectrum or the other, and very strong opinions. But then when I ask them who they voted for, they say, well, I didn't vote. I didn't go. I thought it was a waste of time. Folks, this is not the time to do that. Today, you need to resolve yourself that you and everyone that you know needs to get out on November 3rd and vote. You must do that because this is a critical election in the balance of our nation, the balance of our freedoms. Our way of life absolutely is at stake this election, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. So, folks, keep your heads up, keep fighting, keep the faith. Please don't become discouraged. And if nothing else, show up on November 3rd and bring all of your friends with you. Folks, this is Mark Vines. This is the Mark Vines Show. I appreciate you listening. Please spread the word on this podcast, and I will see you next time.